You know, it seems that regardless of how new a video game movie may be, they still always take inspiration from the classic video games, which might be why they all fail. A lot of video game movies are a bit too showy, they're a bit too into themselves.
It's me!
Some think that the name of the game franchise is enough to get audiences into the theaters, like they're demanding people to see it.
Get over here!
But 99% of the time, it's probably just the screenwriters and producers listening to my favorite video game character.
I'm gonna wreck it!
I mean, if you really want the best advice about adapting a game to a film, all you really have to do is listen to Link. That might be the case, because let's face it, we don't really have a template when it comes to successful video game movies. I mean, what's the closest we've ever had? That's a rhetorical question, because of course the answer is... But why is that? And not why do I have terrible taste in awesome 90s over-the-top movies? Really, you could ask yourself, why are they successful? Why did we have 6 Resident Evil films? And you know what? The answer is the same. Simplicity. Video games themselves always have a very simple premise. Kill zombies, defeat evil robots, save the princess. But you can't make a 2-hour film out of one simple premise, can you? Well, you can, it's not that easy. But what you can look at is why these video game adaptations failed, and that's because they lost their premise. Either that, or they had way too much filler to make a 2-hour film that strayed away from its premise. See, video games by nature are just a series of repeated actions in different levels. There is no story arc, there's just a goal. That's why no one in their right mind felt that Mortal Kombat was a betrayal of the source material, because it was a series of fights with an end goal. Win the tournament, save humanity. But on the flip side, could anybody really tell me the plot of Mario Brothers? Moreover, these semi-successful adaptations work because they already fit into a pre-established cinematic genre. Mortal Kombat, it's a martial arts film. Resident Evil, it's a zombie flick. Am I really praising Resident Evil? So a Tomb Raider film should always work. It's a treasure hunt action film. I mean, simple enough. Or is it too simple? Here is one of those aforementioned catches. Staying true to a video game can oversimplify everything, as I mentioned before, but it can oversimplify a lot of important things, like plot, character, and my general interest in watching the movie. Now, Tomb Raider in 2018 did very well to stick to the premise, to keep things simple, but that doesn't leave it a lot of room when it comes to a character arc or development, and because of that, I found a lot of the characters in this film were overly generic. See, I didn't use the term two-dimensional because some lonely misogynist out there would probably make another joke about Alicia Vikander. But she was never the issue, and I'm actually really glad that in a Tomb Raider movie, Lara Croft was the best developed character, but so many of the other characters had no development. Her brilliant but eccentric father, her sidekick and drunken boat captain, and worst of all, the villain. And this hurts me more than praising a Resident Evil film. I have to pan Walton Goggins. He also happens to be one of my favorite kind of obscure actors. I loved him in Justified. I thought he was one of the best parts of Tarantino's The Hateful Eight. And then he made this. I actually can't believe that he left a very successful show after it was canceled to merely play roles like this, a flat generic villain in a video game movie. Didn't he learn anything from Ian Glenn? I mean, that brought Glenn so much shame that his family exiled him till he gifted 3 dragon eggs to the one true king in hopes of redemption. Aside from Goggins taking this gig, there were a lot of questions that I had, and yes, that meant that my suspension of disbelief could no longer be suspended, and yes, that also meant that it took me out of this film. And yes, I have to admit that some of that had to do with Alicia Vikander. Now, if you haven't seen what ridiculous shape she got into for this role, you don't know how much respect you need to throw her way. However, it wasn't the actor training for the role that I was worried about. Because the training that Lara had is what made me pause. Hey, let's once again talk about awesome but ridiculous 90s movies. Okay, it was early 2000s, but the original Tomb Raider had this scene where you saw Lara Croft fighting this CGI robot doing backflips and getting tossed around without bruising. And you thought to yourself, okay, she's a bit of a superhero. These are the parameters of the film. But the 2018 version of Lara is much more grounded. She's a bike courier. She takes fight lessons at a local club, and she basically doesn't have a formal education or tons of weapons and machinery. All she really has is a chip on her shoulder, which the movie would have you believe is enough. But then this edgy but adventurous, super smart but still street savvy bike courier basically defeats an entire army of highly trained mercenaries, including choking one out herself. Is this possible? Sure, if the woman is well trained, of course, a woman could choke out a guy twice her size. But not because she took classes at the local Y. The whole film for me was just an odd juxtaposition of trying to ground things in reality with no real supernatural elements, but not actually grounding things in reality. It's not a bad film. In fact, it's arguably one of the best video game films ever made. However, it still wasn't enough. It left me with a lot of questions, and my suspension of disbelief snapped like a twig. So, for me, it's still a burn it. Poll question, who is your favorite tiny hero? As always, leave your answers in the comment section below. But until next time, school's out. Hey Real Students, thanks for watching. If you want to subscribe to Real School, click that round Real School logo right beside me. Also click that damn notification bell so you're aware of all of Real School's new content. You can follow me on Twitter, and of course, if you get anything out of Real School, you can always give a little back. Just click the link in the description below or the button down there, and you can become part of my Patreon team.